Why do men fight? You can use the word struggle. Why do men struggle? When I use the word men in this case, it's a neutral form of men. So men or women. Why do people struggle or fight? There is a reason, and you need to consider this. When Jesus speaks, he says things on purpose. It's worthwhile for you to consider what it is that he is saying. For instance, there's a case where Jesus says, "Don't let anyone steal your crown." What does that mean? In my life, I have been allowed, if you will, to be involved with many different struggles throughout my life. And whenever I'm involved in something, I find myself in a situation and I realize when I consider the situation that, yeah, I need to be involved with this particular thing. I will throw myself 100% into that effort. Whether it's a political arena or a theological arena, or maybe it's negotiating a labor agreement. Whatever it is that I end up becoming a part of, I do it well. Like the saying says, once a job has begun, never leave it till it's done. Be the labor great or small, do it well or not at all. I don't want to allow anyone to rule my soul. I don't want to let anyone have dominion over me. While at the same rate, I am very content having a companionable relationship with anyone, whatever their views are. Men fight for a reason. There is a purpose. One man fights because he wants to live. Another man fights because he wants to steal that which does not belong to him. One man cares, another man does not. I'm giving you information to help you make a decision in whichever way you decide to go. Ezekiel speaks of a temple. It would be well of you to read Ezekiel and what he has to say. He speaks of this temple. Learn its layout. Understand it. He says, if you enter through the north gate, you must exit through the south gate. Now, a lot of things can happen from the time that you enter to the time that you exit. But whatever happens, your intention is to exit the opposite gate. The same goes for those that enter the south gate. They must exit the north gate. A lot of things can happen in between, but the intention and purpose is to exit the opposite gate that you entered. Consider these things, know them, and understand them. No one can walk for you. No one can protect your crown except for you. It is your crown. When I was younger, my dad had a job that required him to move around quite a bit. He worked nights, and this particular time in my life, or our lives, you know, we lived, as it were, close to the tracks, both physically, or rather both literally and figuratively. Well, as a kid, I wanted to have some money of my own, and so I had a paper route. I was streetwise, if you will, and I understood the layout. But there was a group of kids out there that you would consider, or I would consider, mean kids. Kids really aren't much different than adults. These kids, for some reason, got it in their head that they didn't like me and they were gonna make my life miserable. So I knew I had to be pretty careful. The word was out. So I had this paper route, and they had learned my routine. So one day I was out delivering papers. I had one of those, I had the papers in front and had the papers in back. You know how you throw it over the top of you. And my routine was to deliver, you know, very nearly all of my papers, and then at the end of my route there was a set of railroad tracks. And these tracks weren't used very much. They went behind an old lumber yard. And there was boxcars parked on this railroad track. And there was two sets of railroad tracks. And it was my habit to go in between them, and that's where I'd go to the bathroom and then go home. Well, I didn't realize that they had learned my routine. So one day I went out to the tracks at the end of my run, and they were all waiting for me. Now this group of kids was all older than me. They were all bigger than me, and I didn't stand much of a chance. There was one kid in this group that was my same age. So I went in between the railroad cars, and there they all were, all of them. Then they started climbing up on top of the railroad cars, and they brought me out into the open, and they set me in between five of them, the five, you know, the grinder, if you will. At that point, the grinding began. And they started pounding on me pretty hard. Now, as this was getting set up, I realized this was going to be bad. So my choices were to fight, but I didn't have a chance, or to, you know, beg for mercy and become a part of them. I did not want to be a part of them. The way they lived wasn't the way I wanted to live. So I had one last option, and that option was, this is going to be bad, but I'm just going to take it. I'm not going to fight back. So then the pounding began. Started with one guy, moved to the next guy, throw him to the next guy, and the pounding continued. Now, everybody finds themselves in bad situations in life. You never know exactly what's going to happen. As I received a beating from one of the kids, he pushed me over to the next kid. Our eyes met, and we locked. He knew what was happening to me was wrong, but he couldn't do anything about it. He knew that if he did not pound on me, it would be him that was in the center of that grinder. But what was happening to me was wrong. What was he supposed to do? Sometimes you find yourself in a situation in life and you want out of that circumstance. You need to pay attention. God knows where you are at, and He may give you an olive branch. If God gives you an olive branch, take it. But you have to be aware. And after that, step by step, little by little, just little moves. Don't make big moves, just little moves. Follow God. Educate your mind. And you may find yourself on your way out, coming home. And as our eyes locked, that kid started hitting me. And I realized right away, he wasn't hitting me as hard as he could. I knew he could be hitting me a lot harder. But he had to make it look good for the rest of the group. He threw the obligatory insults at me and then pushed me to the next guy. And it continued on until I had no strength left to stand up. And I wanted to continue to stand. Finally, I collapsed right there on the railroad tracks. I received a couple of kicks, nothing too terribly serious from that point on. And I just laid there and laid there. I listened to their voices get quieter and quieter as they were congratulating themselves and laughing as they walked away. I don't know how long I laid there. But slowly I came back into consciousness. And I realized I've got to keep breathing. I've got to keep walking. I've got to make it home. I've got to make it home. Slowly I pulled myself up. Got to put one foot in front of the other. I got to keep breathing. One foot in front of the other. Sometimes that's all you can do in life. One foot in front of another. Finally, I made it to the main road. Normally, I would run across the main road, but I didn't have enough strength to do so. Slowly, I made it across. There was a couple cars that had to actually stop. Then I was on the sidewalk, and I was walking my way back home. I noticed a great big maple tree. Seen that tree hundreds of times. And I thought, you know, a person could climb to the top of that tree and he could probably see forever. You gotta go home, Ken. You gotta go home. Kept on walking. Then I made it to the house where the couple of old ladies lived. Back of their house they had a flat roof garage. They had grapevines growing over the top of that garage, and I used to really enjoy going to the top of that garage, sitting there on a nice warm day and eating grapes. You gotta go home.